What's going on, man? Welcome back to the basement. I'm Ron, and I decided to run it back for one last week and give you guys my must buy and sell trade targets for week 12 of the fantasy football season. I know the trade deadline passed in some leagues last week, but this is officially the last call. My trade deadline in my own league happened a couple days ago, or actually, no, it was literally yesterday was the trade deadline. So I imagine some of you guys out there might have your trade deadline expiring after this week or early next week. So we'll do one final video. We're going to go through, I think, 6 players that I'm buying, 3 players that I'm selling across the board. Whether you are a luxury team trying to solidify your squad into the playoffs and get a first round bye, or if you are out here scratching and clawing for that final wild card spot, I have a trade target for you. So with all that being said, if you enjoy, leave a like, subscribe if you're new. And the first player that I am looking to buy, and don't worry, we're going to get deeper than this. I'm not going to tell you just buy all the good players, but we have Ja'Marr Chase. Now, of course, how this works is I take into account the fantasy football strength of schedule. I take into account, I don't know why I said that so crazy, but I take into account just kind of the overall vibes. And then also I look at the rest of season rankings by consensus, and I compare it to my own rankings on the Patreon, patreon.com/Ron Stewart. You can find my rest of season rankings, my waiver wire article, my weekly rankings, my week 12 rankings will go live after this video goes out sometime today. It is Thursday, November 20th, but you can find that in the description and the comment section down below. Now, with Ja'Marr Chase, there's really not a crazy amount of analysis that's going to happen here, okay? He's Ja'Marr Chase. He's been amazing. Ever since Joe Flacco came in there, he has been great. Maybe Joe Burrow even returns at some point this season. I wouldn't really bet on it, but he's a top 3 wide receiver rest of season at worst. Really, what you're going to get here is an interesting opportunity that I actually took advantage of in my own league, and I have gotten questions, Ron, how are your league going? And we'll probably do, like, maybe when the playoffs start, I'll do a team review because I don't want to victory lap teams before things happen. Like, let's see how many of these teams actually make it to the playoffs, and we can kind of talk about them then. But this has been I would say, above average to pretty good year for me in terms of my redraft leagues across the board. Yes, you guys have seen the BDGE league, Your Elite League Mate. It's not my best work, but it is a very weird super flex format that isn't my typical bread and butter on this channel. I'll show you guys my home league here in a second. But essentially, this is what it comes down to with Ja'Marr Chase is he's suspended for this week, right? We have week 12, we have week 13, we have week 14. There are 3 weeks left in the regular season. There is a pretty good chance that the guy who has Ja'Marr Chase right now can't afford to go into this week without Ja'Marr Chase. So can you offer him a similar tier wide receiver or maybe a tier down at wide receiver to give him a fill-in this week, and then you can get Ja'Marr Chase moving forward? And that's what I did in my home league. I sent my Justin Jefferson and Zach Charbonnet. So Jefferson, the wide receiver 7 by Fantasy Pros here, but for me, I have him probably right on the fringe of being a wide receiver 1 in my rest of season rankings. Zach Charbonnet gives him a flex option this week in half PPR. He gets a wide receiver fill-in in the form of Justin Jefferson for Ja'Marr Chase. And now I get Ja'Marr Chase. I have to eat him. I have to eat his 0 this week, and then I get him next week. And I felt like my team was in a good enough spot to stomach this loss. Now, this is where I will show you guys what my squad looks like at this current moment. And it's not the flex on my boy Riley. I think it just made a lot of sense for both sides here. This is the squad right now. It's a half PPR. We have Drake May, Trevion Henderson, Derrick Henry, JSN, Devontae Smith, Jake Ferguson, Alec Pierce, Dalton Schultz in the flex spot, which is like, Ron, like your flex is super weak, but we have Ja'Marr Chase coming back next week. So Dalton Schultz will be subbed out. We'll have Ja'Marr Chase in there. I am comfortable enough with Alec Pierce in my flex spot on a half PPR that I felt I could make a move like this and be fine. I'll show you in a second. I also kind of decimated a little bit my wide receiver depth with another deal I did that we'll talk about in this video. Honestly, kind of wheeled and dealed during the deadline. I figure you guys would find this interesting. Really, the only weakness I feel I have now is maybe a little bit with the flex with Alec Pierce being our second flex and then RB2, right? If Ramondre comes back and he completely throttles Henderson, we'll be in a little bit of a tough spot with Kyle Monangai off the bench. We give up Zach Charbonnet, but I do think Walker's new role has kind of pushed him ahead of Charbonnet by a lot, to the point where I don't really want to start Charbonnet. I already have JSN. Like, I don't really want to own the entire Seahawks offense, even though they've been okay. Now, I will show you Riley's team here. I'll show you the standings Why not? So the way that this team works, or the way that this league works, is the top team in each division, right, West and East, those are the 2 first-round buys, and then there are 4 wild cards left over. As of right now, I am 1 game out of a first-round bye. I feel pretty good about my playoff chances. I feel like I could stomach this. On top of that, honestly, I hate to pull this card. I've just been unlucky. I have the most points for, but I have the second highest points against. Me and the Baker and the Cook have been getting absolutely screwed by the schedule here. But what I will say is that my points for is so high that my belief is all I have to do is win 1 game, and that'll get me into 7-7, and then I'm going to win a tiebreaker from points for. But I would really like to catch up on Lapino here to get into that first round spot and get that bye week. Now, the guy I traded with, Riley, is 5-6, desperately needs a win right now, and that's why trading away Jamar Chase made sense for him. So definitely something to look at in your own league, and that actually gives us a great transition into our next trade target here, where we can talk about Derrick Henry. Now, usually, like later in this video, we'll talk through fantasy calc and some real trades, but I'm showing you real trades that I've made in my own league. And the other deal that I made on this team was that I traded for Derrick Henry. Now, this one I don't know how you guys are going to feel about this one, but here's what we do. With my buddy Conk, I trade away, and I don't know how you guys feel about me showing trades in my league, but I think you guys would find it interesting that, it's one thing to say, oh, you could maybe do this. This is what I've been doing in my league, is I traded away Judkins, Drake London, Tyler Warren. I get back Derrick Henry and Jake Ferguson. Here's my thoughts, right? If we want to go back to my squad here, here's my thoughts is with this team in a half PPR, my running back room was Trevion Henderson, Quinshawn Judkins. You saw I just traded away Charbonnet and Kyle Monangai. I think that would be okay, but in a half PPR, you definitely want some more running back firepower. I really like Derrick Henry, and we'll get into why that is in a second here, but I trade for Derrick Henry to get myself like a solidified RB1. I really like him moving forward, especially in a half PPR. I give him Judkins. I don't want anything to do with that Shedeur Sanders offense, to be honest. For me, I think Judkins is just a fine run-of-the-mill back-end RB2. Drake London, we're going to talk about as a sell later in this video. I want nothing to do with a sprained PCL attached to Kirk Cousins. Sprained PCL is what kept Bowers out and inefficient for like a 4 to 5 week stretch. It's what kept out Ricky Pearsall for a 4 to 5 week stretch as well. It took forever for Bowers to become the same guy. I don't want to have to wait until week 17 for London to be the same guy. And even then, I don't like what I've seen from Kirk Cousins. Now, I had to give a little bit of juice on top, downgrading from Tyler Warren to Jake Ferguson. But to me, that's not a huge downside, right? Like, it sucks. It's not fun. But in a half PPR, I think there's going to be plenty of touchdowns to be caught for the Dallas Cowboys with Jake Ferguson. So I will happily downgrade from Warren to Ferguson to kind of get rid of Drake London and upgrade Quinshawn Judkins to Derrick Henry. Now, why I like Derrick Henry as a buy here is because this to me is his last call. In PPR, he's the RB19 in points per game. He's coming off his first 20-point game since week 1. So he's not going to be super cheap, but you just saw there is he was attainable still. And for me, I think that it is just wheels all the way up for Derrick Henry. This is where he usually shines. This is from Ian Hartitz here. His yards per carry by month, 4.3 in September, 4.8 in October, 4.9 in November, 5.2 in December, 5.4 in January. It keeps on going up. He gets better as the year gets colder. And up next, he has the Jets, who are awful, the Bengals, the Steelers, and the Bengals again. Banger matchups across the board. I think he's going to be really strong. The Ravens have a lot to play for right now. And I think that they are going to score on the back of Derrick Henry. So I think that he is a great buy candidate as well. Now, enough talking about my own league. I really only bring it up because I've gotten comments of, Ron, how are your leagues doing? So I figured I'd give you a little sneak peek. I think in the future, right, so like next week, we're not going to do a trade target video. We will have some time to eventually cover a lot of those high-stakes teams we drafted over the summer on stream. And I'm very excited to show you guys how those teams are doing. Just want to wait until the playoffs are officially announced so that I can like actually take some victory laps or do whatever, because you don't want to, gloat or celebrate until the bell has rung, at least to, okay, I got X amount of teams in the playoffs. Now, let's talk about our third trade target here. Amon-Ra St. Brown, another luxury buy, all right? This is like, if you're looking for a stud wide receiver or your running backs are super strong, but maybe you want to get sell a high-end running back to get a wide receiver, I like Amon-Ra St. Brown. I think that he's one of the more accessible stud wide receivers right now, where he's been the wide receiver 14 over the last 3 weeks since his bye week. He's getting outscored by Jalen Waddle, Stephon Diggs, Michael Wilson over that span. I imagine whoever has Amon-Ra St. Brown, maybe frustrated isn't the right word, but he hasn't been bona fide superstar like he was early on in the year. Maybe they even buy into a little bit of Dan Campbell's calling plays now. Everything's going to Jameson Williams. What about my guy Amon-Ra St. Brown? But if we look at the usage, he has still been the wide receiver 5 in expected points per game over that 3-game span with 19.8 expected points per game. That's based on his targets, his ADOT, his red zone volume. 19.8 points per game, you take that all day. Instead, he's underperforming that at 13.9. That's not going to continue. He's going to bounce back, be a top 6 guy rest of season, and I really want to attack this Detroit schedule. No Sam Laporta is also a huge boost for him, even though he hasn't necessarily realized it yet, but we are getting dome games week 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. From here on out, dome games for the Lions. There's going to be tons of points, and I want in. Moving on, or actually not moving on. Now we can actually talk about some real trades over on fantasycalc.com. I'll make sure to link this down below in the comments. So we're going to look at real trades from real fantasy football leagues. We'll do 10 to 14 teamers, half to full PPR. What's Amon-Ra going for? I can't imagine it's like outrageous. It can't be. I mean, that's just not going to happen, Judy in London, but I would do Jefferson straight up for Amon-Ra St. Brown. I do apologize that I've had Jefferson as a buy a few times this year. You guys saw at the front of this video, I did sell Jefferson for Jamar Chase. I thought KOC would turn things around. I still do have faith, but if you could just sell on name value of Jefferson, even if you have to add, like I did where I had Charbonnet to Jefferson to get Jamar Chase, I would even do something similar for Amon-Ra St. Brown. It's just kind of where we're at here. Would I sell Rice and Odumze? No, I wouldn't. Would I sell Bijan for St. Brown and Algier? That to me is dead even depending on what you need, right? Like if you need a wide receiver, give me Amon-Ra St. Brown. If you need a running back, give me Bijan side. Really just because Bijan to me gets a pretty fat downgrade similar to Drake London with Kirk Cousins in there, but still he's like a top 6 running back and still if we drafted today would be a mid to late first round pick for me. Powers and Olave for Amon-Ra. If I had a 6-second tight end, I would, even though I love Bowers, but if my second tight end was like, I don't know, if it was like Warren or Kelsey who's kind of surging right now and I needed wide receiver help, I would entertain that. And then we can find one more that seems somewhat close. Pearsall and CeeDee Lamb, no thank you. Dowdle and Waddle, I would if somebody wanted to do that. Henderson and Flowers, yes, but I don't think that that's realistic. Wow, this is an interesting one because we just talked about Chase. Obviously, I'd prefer Chase to Amon-Ra St. Brown. Not by much, but this does look like one of those deals that, you know, like we talked about where if somebody's looking to dodge a bye week, can you squeeze something out? I do wonder if you get a plus on top of, like from a desperate Chase owner, could you get him to throw something on top of Chase to get Amon-Ra St. Brown just to get similar production without eating that suspension? I'm not sure, but let's move on to our next buy candidate. Here we have Aaron Jones. Now, this is another repeat. We talked about him last week. We won't spend too much time. But if you don't have the capital to go buy Derrick Henry, a cheap RB2 I think you can buy is Aaron Jones. The Vikings have this stench on them. Nobody wants the Vikings. But Aaron Jones has been the RB19 over the last 3 weeks. And over the last 2 weeks, he's had a great role. This is from the Fantasy Life Utilization Report. You can see in weeks 10 and 11. 70% of the snaps, 67% of the snaps as just the lead back in this backfield. He hasn't had big scores because the offense has been bad with J.J. McCarthy. I still have some hope. I've tempered expectations on the passing game, but I keep going back. If anybody can make it work with McCarthy, I do think it's KOC, or maybe, you hope that they bring in Brosmer, who could be, I don't know, people keep pointing at him as like, could this be the Brock Purdy, Trey Lance thing? I would doubt it. But you look at those quotes from KOC of we have a quarterback problem in the NFL. It is very funny now that KOC finds himself in the position of, the Giants with Daniel Jones, or maybe not Giants with Daniel Jones, but you know what I'm saying? Like these young quarterbacks that he was talking about candidly, like Anthony Richardson and Trey Lance in the past. He now has one of those on his hands. I wonder if he can get himself out of this pickle and fix some things. I will say, just kind of a random shout out. It's late in the season. You guys are going to get me kind of rambling here, but the QB School has a great channel, great Patreon where he breaks down the quarterback play in the NFL. I fell asleep watching, and I don't mean it because it was boring. I was watching it like midnight and just kind of had it on as I drifted to sleep. But Just even watching the first half of him talking through JJ McCarthy, it's kind of crazy. He kept pointing out KOC's body language on the sideline as McCarthy screws shit up is crazy. I wish KOC would chill out and have a little more of kid's gloves as he's kind of operating here. But if McCarthy sails something, like KOC is like pissed on the sideline. So I don't know. I just thought it was an interesting dynamic. And again, if I was to bet on anybody to, do the Josh Allen turnaround, it would be KOC, but it's looking tough. But still, I do think Aaron Jones, even in this shitty offense, he's been the RB19 over the last 3 weeks, and I think that that's kind of his floor. He's the consensus RB19 this week, even against a really good Green Bay defense. Now, let's see. Is Aaron Jones going for much? I know that running backs go at a little bit of a premium this time of year. Ken Walker and Parker Washington, I'm all set. Kittle, Aaron Jones, Jake Ferguson. I would only do this if I was desperate for a running back. I will say that's one of the levers you can pull. Like you saw it in the second deal I made where I traded Warren to downgrade to Jake Ferguson. Tight end, to me, is so insignificant unless you have McBride or even Bowers to a lesser extent. But it's insignificant, especially in these start 8 situations. If you have 2 wide receiver, 2 flexes, tight ends matter. But like I was saying, they're one of the levers you can pull where if you just, if you're starting Air at RB2, you're starting Kyle Monunga at RB2, you don't have the luxury to have a George Kittle. From there, that's, like I said, one of the levers you can pull where you can still get a decent tight end, right? You downgrade from Kittle to Ferguson, but then you add a Aaron Jones on top. So Fantasy Calc has you losing this one. I think it's probably a little bit of a loss, but if it helps your team, I think that it makes a lot of sense to do something among those lines. Would I sell Hampton for Aaron Jones and Dobbs? If I couldn't wait for Hampton to come back, I would. Downs for Aaron Jones easily. And that's probably where I'll end it. I think Debo for Aaron Jones is probably about even. Just depends on if you need a wide receiver or a running back. And then I have 2 cheap wide receivers, right? If you don't have the pieces to go out there and get a Jamar Chase or an Amon-Ra St. Brown, here's 2 cheap pieces. I'm still holding on to Tez Johnson. I know he's been a waiver wire ad for us. He's on waivers in shallow leagues. If he's not on waivers in your league, I do like getting Tez Johnson. Now, I wouldn't do here's a 1-for-1. Maybe you could do a cheap 1-for-1, right? Can you do, if you're fine at running back, can you do a bench running back piece for Tez Johnson? But I really like Tez Johnson sneaked in on the back of deals. I still do think if we're going to get one of these off-the-wall rookie wide receiver breakouts, think Amon-Ra St. Brown, Rashee Rice, Jaden Reed, last year, Jalen McMillan, right? Guys who are day 3 picks or guys who didn't run a lot of routes until late in the season when we look at years past. I'm not Brian Thomas, Ladd McConkey. That's not Tez Johnson. But Tez Johnson could be kind of like a Tank Dell, something like that. That's what I'm hoping for. He has been at 10.9 points per game as the wide receiver 35 since week 9. It's not amazing, but he's a fine flex play. He's in a good offense. Last week, he ran 97% of the routes, a season high. He is essentially the wide receiver 2 on this team next to Mecca Ibuka, and I think that there's going to be plenty of opportunity for him to ball out. He's the wide receiver 32 this week, and as we get more bye weeks here, as we get injuries happening, I think that he is a fine flex play moving forward. Now, what you can sell off to get Tez Johnson has to be cheap. It can't be, we're talking Tez Johnson, man. We're talking Tez, yeah, so I don't know. If somebody needs Jared Goff, fine. Tez Johnson, Darnell Mooney. This is what I'm talking about. Just a bench running back, yeah. Algier. So, all right, yeah. Blake Corum. All right, you guys get it. You can do a bench running back that will never make your lineup, just a random handcuff, and you can get a fun flex with upside. And then similar deal here, Wan'Dale Robinson. Just some cheap flex options for you guys. The Giants have the 4th easiest schedule rest of way for wide receivers via Mike Clay over at ESPN. And he's the wide receiver 16 this week by consensus. He is a legitimate top 20 play at wide receiver this week in week 12. He's going to be on the road versus Detroit, but it's going to be in a dome game, potentially Jameis Winston at quarterback. And I think that we're going to see 40-plus Jameis Winston attempts. Wan'Dale Robinson could have 10 to 12 targets and be a pretty good start this week. And really, like I said, the rest of the way, he's going to be a top 30 wide receiver every week in terms of rankings. So he's not going to be as cheap as Tez Johnson, but still relatively cheap. If Goddard's not making your lineup, man, you can sell Goddard for Wan'Dale, even though that seems selling Goddard a little low. Same with Mark Andrews. Kenneth Gainwell, if Kenneth Gainwell's not cracking your lineup, if you want to kind of take advantage of his pop from last week and get Wan'Dale there, Kareem Hunt for Wan'Dale sounds good. I think I would do Michael Wilson for Wan'Dale, right? Michael Wilson more of a short-term rental, but I think that might be playing it too cute. I prefer Wan'Dale to DJ Moore rest of season. Pollard for Wan'Dale sounds good as well. Now let's kind of change gears here for the final stretch of this video. We're going to talk through 3 players I'm looking to sell in fantasy football. Now, I do want to make it clear. I have Javonte Williams as a sell here. I don't know why I said Javonte Williams. Here's what I'll say and why I kind of have been straying from sell videos, because I don't want you to look at your team and you see Javonte Williams in your RB2 spot and you say, oh my God, I need this guy off my team right now. It's not what I'm saying, all right? If he makes sense on your team and he's fine, that's all good. But if you've kind of found yourself where like Trevin Henderson has now kind of worked his way up the depth chart, maybe you have Woody Marks off the bench and you have like Derrick Henry at RB1, you don't really need Javonte in your flex. You could maybe sell off Javonte if your wide receivers are a little bit lackluster or you have a different hold to fill on your team. I think he makes a lot of sense. Or if you're trying to get one of these deals done to go get a Jamar Chase or an Amon-Ra St. Brown, I think Javonte as part of a package deal can get you there. Now, if none of that makes sense, I'm not telling you to go sell Javonte for 80% of his value just to get him off your team. So that's a big fat disclaimer with all of these sells. You do not have to sell these guys. I'm just saying that when you are looking to buy any of the buys we listed up top, these should be some of the guys you are looking to include in that package, right? So just when you operate with these sells, it's not to sell them, it's to buy a player or fix a hole on your team, and these are guys I would be willing to move to do so. With Javonte, I look across the board, right? When I talk about how I come to the lists in these videos, I look at like ESPN's rest of season rankings and the consensus rest of season rankings, and Javonte's like the RB8 rest of season. Now that's like all good and well. I guess he's been pretty good this year, but since week 6, he's been at 12.5 points per game as the RB19. I'm absolutely fine cashing out at top 10 running back prices right now. Like, what do I have to add to Javonte to get to Derrick Henry conversations? That's what I am looking for. He has had the 10th easiest running back schedule to this point. He is the 26th toughest moving forward. It is not a running back friendly schedule here down the stretch. And if I could sell him, I would. Like, again, he's holding really high value. If you've held him through this point, I think that you could sell right now before the deadline. I don't know how you're getting James Cook on top of Pearsall, but if you can, I would do like Javonte and Pearsall for James Cook would make sense to me. Not really in the business of buying Bijan. Javonte and Teagan's for Rashee Rice. I would do that in a heartbeat. Javonte for Breece Hall and Ferguson. Probably not. Javonte, Harvey for Bijan. I would, but let's get real here. Javonte. I would do Javonte for Ibuka straight up. And I think that this is saying it's so close that if you moved out Monungai, I'd be even. But I would do Javonte for Ibuka in a heartbeat. Javonte and a piece for Rashee Rice. Again, sign me up for that all day long. Josh Jacobs. I'm not really interested in buying Josh Jacobs, I'll be honest. I'm not really in the business of wanting to buy injured players is kind of where I'm at this point in the year. It's also why I like Drake London as a sell. But you kind of get the gist of that. Like Javonte and Rashee Rice for JT. That's paying the piper, but I would do that. Our next sell is kind of on the back of me not wanting to buy injured players. Some people seem like they like the reason that Drake London deal went through for me, right? The London, Judkins, and Warren for Jake Ferguson and Derrick Henry is the guy hit me up. He's weak at wide receiver, and he was interested in London, and I took that and ran with it. I have Drake London as like my wide receiver 25 rest of season. I don't really want him at all. And if I can sell him, if I can get out of the Kirk Cousins business, if I could get out of the PCL business, which is a ligament in your knee, again, that was Bauer's issue that kept him out for like 4+ weeks. Kept him out for I think 2 to 3 weeks. But again, remember, he tried to play on it injured for 2 weeks and was completely ineffective. Ricky Pearsall, that is what's kept him out for a long time this year. I just don't want to mess around with PCL injuries. I don't want to mess around with a team who has Kirk Cousins at quarterback. I'm just kind of out on the Falcons at this point, to be honest with you. And I think Drake London is still a name, right? Like I would add to Drake London and see what I could get. But I want out of the Drake London business. Drake London, I would do Drake London for Chris Olave straight up, especially if I was a team. Like if you are a team out there that can't afford to wait on London, that's a straight swap that makes sense to me. London for Odunze and Woody Marks. The trade calc has it London side. Give me Odunze, Woody Marks side all day long. London on top of Warren to get McBride easily. I'm adding London to get an upgrade like that all day long. London for Olave and Pearsall. Again, I would do that. London. I don't know if you wanted to trade like injured players for injured player, London and Tracy for Josh Jacobs, I would be fine with that. London for ETN. If I couldn't afford to wait on London's return and I'm like 5-6 right now, I would take ETN. I would take Chase Brown. ETN in a piece even. I mean, what day is it today? 20th? Yeah, so I mean, this is even when London's injury was pretty... Dude, I would trade London for Pickens straight up in a heartbeat. I don't know. I'm curious what you guys think, but I have London wide receiver 25 rest of season. So there's like 20 wide receivers you could offer me for London that I would snap accept in an instant. Like, I'm taking T. Higgins over Drake London. So I don't know. Oh, damn, I didn't mean to do that. But that's where I'm at on that. I don't know if you guys are going to agree with that, but I don't want anything to do with the Drake London business. Now, this last one, huge disclaimer again. Do not, my last sell is Puka Nacua. Do not sell Puka Nacua for like T. Higgins and $50 of fab. That is not what I'm telling you to do. But if you can fairly swap out Puka for one of JT, McCaffrey, Gibbs, Achane, JSN, or Jamar Chase, if you are not getting one of those 6 players back, do not trade Puka Nacua. Flashing red lights, all right? JT, CMC, Gibbs, Achane, JSN, Jamar Chase. If you are not getting one of those 6 players back for Puka Nacua, just keep them. But I just don't like the usage right now, and it scares me a little bit. All right? Since coming back from injury, he's been at 65% of the routes, 62% of the routes, 75% of the routes. He hasn't been over 20-plus PPR points in a game since week 9. I'm sure maybe he'll just be fine. Maybe he's ramping back up, and this will get back up to, the 90% plus of the routes or the 85% plus of the routes, and he'll be fine. But the amount of heavy tight end usage that they've been using and Puka coming back from injury and Devontae being involved, it just spooks me a little bit. Again, I would still draft him in the mid to late first round if we did a draft today, but if he's still seen in your league as what he was weeks 1 through 6, where he was, if we were going to draft over today, he was the 101 for a small section of time. If he still has any of that kind of value, I would look again. Give me one of those 6 players and I will sell Puka. Now, let's see. Are people down on Puka? Are people... There might even be... I imagine there's YouTube channels out there that are like, go buy Puka. And this is the thing. Like, if there's somebody with Jamar Chase out there and they need a bye week fill-in, can I get Jamar Chase in a small piece for Puka? I would do that all day. Puka and Woody Marks for McCaffrey. Pretty easily, I would do that. Again, I'm looking for my 6 players here. If you don't got one of my 6 players, I'm not breaking bread. It seems like it's going to be a lot of Jamar Chase for Puka type of deals here. Yeah, like Puka for Javonte and Chase. Lamb and Rashi, you're pushing it. But you could talk me into either of these if you needed running back help. But you get what I'm saying. I'm not adding Judkins to get Chase there. That's ridiculous. All right, so I mean, I guess trying to trade Puka for one of the 6 isn't as much on the table as I thought. I only found one deal with one of those 6 in it, so maybe don't sell Puka. But that's all I'm saying. There are 6 guys that I would like to sell Puka for. If you cannot get that done, then just hold Puka. It's still Puka Nacua. He's still absolutely amazing. I just have a little bit of pause with him down the stretch here compared to those other players. But that is going to do it for us today. That is my must buy and sell trade targets. Last call. That is it. Vince Carter, it's over meme. That's it. I think that's going to be it for trade targets. Maybe next week. I don't even want to put this out there because you guys are going to kill me if I don't do it. Maybe we'll do a Dynasty trade targets video on the Dynasty channel. I don't know. It's just been tough. The redraft stuff takes up so much of my time during the season. It's tough to make time for Dynasty. I hear you guys. I know you want the Dynasty stuff. I've been updating the Dynasty rankings on the back end for the Patreon. I just haven't had enough time to do video content for it because I would hate to just like have a list of players and kind of ramble about it. I'm like, you guys know I'm trying to do research. I'm trying to have these guys well thought out. So we'll see. But actually, no, next week being Thanksgiving week, that's going to be tough. I don't know. But if you do want the buy and sells, those are on the Patreon. Like patreon.com/Ron Stewart has my Dynasty rankings with buy and sell candidates for every position ranked like 50 to 60 deep. So that's all on there if you guys want it. But that's going to do it for us today. As always, if you enjoy, leave a like, subscribe if you're new, and I will see you guys in the next one. Stones, like
this froze. Wait, ice cold. Wait, oh, oh. Wait, ice around my body like I'm